I want to say good morning, everybody. And this is my favorite time of the year, so let's all say, go Wings. Go Wings. Do you know what that means? Anybody know what it means? Kurt, what does it mean? 1-3-2 last night. It's the best time of the year. It's Stanley Cup baseball all together, so it's good. And it's great to be together. I just was asked, my name is Rob Pasick, by the way, if I don't know a few of you. And I was just asked by Carl Inch how we got started. And I don't know if Bob remembers this, but probably about 97 or something. When did Deep Change come out?
1901.
1901. That was back then, yeah. I would say in the 90s sometime, maybe 95. I was running small groups of business leaders, much like, maybe 8-10 people. I'm still running them. Several of you in the room have been part of those. And it's a monthly seminar. So I said, well, I'll get this great book that I'd like you all to read. And it's Deep Change. And so we read that book, and people were very moved by it. And I think it did come out about, at the same time, one of my books, in 1990, yeah, because I had written a book around the same time, and Bob and I were in a hot chase to see who could sell 1,000 first, right? You did pretty well because it's out in its second edition, I believe, is it? You got a workbook. It's a great book if you haven't read it. Bob's written many, as has Gretchen. But I said, well, we read this book, and I said, well, maybe I can get Bob to come to speak to the group. And we were up, so we took the upstairs room at Zingerman's at the deli, and I asked people to bring a few people to come along, and so we ended up with about 20 people in the room, and Bob gave a discussion and talked to us about the book, which was great. And that's how Leaders Connect was born, really, because one thing after another, and we kept having these meetings, bringing in speakers, and it's been going on probably about 20 years now. And who was it? Kurt, a couple people were at the IT Zone. Kevin was there too. We used to have it at the IT Zone for a long time, and then we moved. That was I remember the IT Zone. That was before Spark. We got a lot of history in Ann Arbor, and then we've been here. And now it looks like we're at the seams here. Come on in, Larry. So I was joking. We're going to have to make Leaders Connect mean you're all going to have to sit real close together or share seats, because I think we've hit the max for the room here. So we start out with the Connect piece, and sometimes we have an ability to have everybody present a little bit about who they are, but today we're going to just have a few guests come up, and we do not charge for the event. Bank of Ann Arbor underwrites it, as does Zingerman's, and then Leaders Connect underwrites this. And Roger Rail underwrites it by providing the video, all of which are on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, and Roger's a man about town with recording a lot of events and helping consult about video and technology. So we're going to move into doing some of these presentations. First of all, who's the speaker from? Kevin? Come on up, Kevin. So our sponsor from Bank of Ann Arbor, maybe he could tell a few things about what's going on at the bank. You got any money, Kevin? What's your rate?
Well, good morning. Yeah. My name's Kevin Sally with Bank of Ann Arbor. As Rob mentioned, yeah, I do remember the old IT Zone days, and when this event was actually held downtown. And again, we're very fortunate to be a part of the program here in 2015 now. And just a little bit about myself. I've been with the bank about 10 years now, and in the residential lending, small investment side of the bank. I think most of you in this room probably know about the bank now, so I won't get into all of those types of details, but just one small note is within the residential side of the Bank of Ann Arbor, something you may not know about. We have a physician's loan for helping those folks come into the local market, obviously whether it's St. Joe's or U of M Hospital or some of the other programs here in town. That is a bit unique, provides some flexibility for those young would-be doctors. And so if you have clients like that are trying to move into town and need some help getting relocated, we'd love to help with that. So again, appreciate a chance to be a sponsor of this event, and yeah, go Wings.
Do you also have foot loads to help people pay for their physicians, or is that, no, we don't need it anymore, right? Thanks, Kevin. So I know Kevin since he's a kid, basically. I did, and it's nice to see you at the bank. Next, I'd like to bring up Amanda. And one of the things that we do here, since we don't charge, is we ask people to think about contributing to a nonprofit. And so every month we feature a nonprofit that is doing great things. And a lot of it has to do around education. Today's theme is great teachers. And we're going to present today, Amanda, talking about 826 Ann Arbor. And right? I get the numbers right?
826 Michigan.
Michigan,
Right.
826 Michigan.
Right.
My dyslexia might kick in, I don't know. But this is a program started by Dave Eggers, I believe.
Right.
He's a great writer. And how many of you have gone by the robot store and wondered what that is? Okay, well, you're about to find out.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I was good. Thank you for having me, Rob, by the way. Good morning. I was going to ask how many of you have heard of 826 Michigan? Few. And how many of you have been by the robot store, which is our alter ego, super secret, other stuff? Thank you for doing that. We have a really unusual model. So we're writing and tutoring center. We serve about 3,000 school-age students, some in Ann Arbor, most of them Ypsilanti public school students, and increasingly Detroit. So we've been around 10 years, but for about 2 years we've been working in the city of Detroit. We work out of a little office in which we recruit volunteers and plan our work that happens in public and charter schools in the city and in library branches. And it's all based on this concept that one-on-one attention is the key ingredient for success for young people. So we have tiny staff, there are 8 of us, but we have an army of volunteers. We have 2,200 adults in Michigan that are volunteers for our organization. So it's a big impact, but we're really effective with the funds that we have because we have this small paid staff. And the cool part of the model is another way that we're really effective is that store. So the robot store, this is the question I really want to know. How many people have either been by or been in and not realized that we are actually something else? Has anybody been fooled? That's what we do best, actually. We fool our students a little bit too. The store generates enough revenue to pay all of our rent for that space on Liberty Street and about half of our overhead and other costs. So it's really an effective part of moving us forward financially, and it really allows us to say to donors and other funders that when you give, you're giving straight to our programs. You're not paying for rent and other things. Our big initiative in our 10-year anniversary year is that we are about to make a firm plan and announcement that we are opening a second robot store in Detroit. So we're launching a campaign to raise the funds to do that. We're excited. If you're going to open a robot store in Detroit, we found the exact right spot. It's in Eastern Market, and it's going to be amazing. And of course, it's not really just going to be a robot store, but it will be a hub for all of those volunteers to connect and for us to serve thousands of school-age students. So I hope you will consider getting involved. Pop in the robot store and see me sometime. Quickly, we do a spring benefit dinner every year. We've done it for 5 years in this room until we outgrew it, much like Rob's group is outgrowing this room. We are now, next week, Friday, at Zingerman's Cornman Farms. It is an enchanting and beautiful venue. Our guest of honor is best-selling author, National Book Award finalist Bonnie Jo Campbell. So she will be speaking. One of our students will be speaking. It's in the barn. It's beautiful. We have 10 tickets left. These are the event invitations that are on most of your tables. I didn't get to everybody yet. This is just info about our work that you can read. I hope some of you will join us. Come to me soon because there are just 10 tickets left for next week. And thank you for having me. It's really nice to be here, Rob.
Thank you. So this is a great event coming up, and part of the effort in Ann Arbor and throughout Michigan to bring everybody to be a teacher. I think part of your book is that we all have a teacher within us, and so this is a great way to bring that teacher out. I also want to mention that another one of our companies, organizations that we promote is the Neutral Zone, which is also putting on an event in a few weeks. And so that's another place if you're interested to donate. And also they put on an event. They have a poetry slam and music and everything, and that's coming up, I think, maybe in a week or so. So that's another thing to be aware of. So we have lots of other things, and we are connected to the University of Michigan. I teach there now, teach a class in the fall on managing professional relationships. Thanks to Gretchen and Bob for helping me organize that, and Dante for being my co-teacher with that. And Dante has been working with Rishi. Rishi, come on up and tell us, you got a program coming up that's pretty excited, and so tell us about your center at the business school, what you got coming up.
Glad to be here. Yes, I'm Rishi Mongiel at the University of Michigan Ross School of Business. I happen to be on the same day that my colleagues will be talking about even more good that's happening at business. One of the corners of the world that I'm in is a new Center for Social Impact that's at the Ross School of Business. And we're specifically looking at how to use the power of business and management to have a direct impact on society. And so in prior years, we've had a nonprofit center where that's typically ways of parlaying management practice into doing good. But as a lot of other fields are emerging, especially with our students thinking, how can I use my skills directly to impact communities and societies every day? So we've now expanded and have a host of programs everywhere from launching businesses that have both financial and social return to more of the traditional paths of training leaders to sit on boards and figure out a way that they can make an impact in the community. So we're pretty excited that this year we're bringing a lot of community partners, business folks, education and government together for our launch. It's up this coming Wednesday at 5 o'clock at the Ross School. We invite all of you to come by if possible. Our guest speaker is going to be Dave Egner. He's the CEO of the New Economy Initiative, which is an initiative around Detroit where a dozen foundations have pulled over $130 million to think of new ways of solving urban issues. And it's very reflective of what we're trying to do as a center, which is, again, bringing different sectors together to solve problems. So, love to talk to you more. Please let me or Dante know if we can help give you more information.
And that's a free program?
It's a free program this Wednesday, 5 o'clock.
And if they have a company that they want to connect with you to get support and
Yes.
students to work with, let's just contact you and...
Yes, please do. And that's social impact at umich.edu. So that's a real simple remembrance. We're always looking for partners now to do programs where we can support you and you can support our students.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rishi. And I want to mention we have one other partnership that we're really excited about, and that's with Literati Books. Hillary, stand up and say hi. Hillary's one of the co-owners of Literati. And thank you, by the way. I went to your store just before I visited with my granddaughter a couple weeks ago, and Claire helped me pick out some big hit books for a 1-year-old. So they have a great upstairs section of children's books. And we're going to have Gretchen and Bob's book available. You want to show it later? Okay, there it is. And they'll be available to sign these books afterwards. And you take credit cards, is that what I understand? So we're going to just kind of create a line going along the wall here afterwards. And if you can't stay and you've got to get out and you'd like a book, just leave a card or something and with your name on it. And we can arrange to get that book for you. You can pick it up at the store. Then you can have the added value of seeing what a great store it is. And now you got a coffee shop upstairs. And it's so popular I could never get a seat there. That's the only problem. So we can tell those students not to study there, but just to move along. So it's a great place, and it's wonderful to have a new bookstore in Ann Arbor. She came in just as Nicola sold her bookstore to a Michigan chain, but it's now one of the only local bookstores that remains standing, and it's a great one. So we also want to feature a couple of people who are doing great things in the community with businesses. This is all about, Leaders Connect is all about bringing the news about great businesses. So Madhuri and Roger Newton, come on up, and you guys can talk about some things that are happening with your businesses. Come on up, Madhuri. So I'll start with Madhuri. Did I get the name right? Madhuri? Madhuri. And she's with GDI, and GDI has just been, it's been a company around for a long time, but it's been awarded one of the 50 companies to watch in the state. Okay. Is that because of you? We should watch you, or should we watch the company? Both. Okay. So you want to tell us what's going on?
Good morning. Thanks for inviting me here. GDI has been around for 23 years, and probably a lot of you know about the company, but then we spun off in 4 years ago. And GDI has been primarily in information technology consulting, staffing. And Info-Ready is a product platform company. And the cool thing we are doing there is we are creating a lot of collaborative solutions and also the matchmaking solutions. Now that opens up, just too many options for us to create solutions. We have built several products on the platform, competition space that is being used by universities. And then now we are focusing on the main problem that everybody is trying to solve is talent acquisition. I think Governor also has a lot of initiatives to tackle that problem. And Info-Ready technology is the matchmaking technology. That's the unique technology we are using, again, to solve the talent acquisition problem. So that's the main thing we are focused on, excited about. 50 companies to watch, that's how we are recognized right now in the state. And fast-growing company, Washington County. So we are very excited about that. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you. And some of you may know Rushan Kulkarni, who's founded these companies and well-known entrepreneur in the state. Guys, come on in, and we'll get some more chairs here, but got people lined up outside. So I want to also introduce Roger. Come on over, Roger. And I guess Roger and I go back to about 2002, and I actually was introduced to you through Bob, as I recall, and came in and did some consulting and coaching with Aspirion 1, and now we're on to Aspirion 2.0 or something like that. So why don't you, I think people are curious what's been happening with Aspirion. If they're lucky, they've been following their stocks, which has been going up, but and they own some of it, but let us know what's going on.
Sure. Thanks, Rob. It's wonderful to have Bob here and Gretchen, because I'm very fortunate that I spend one day a week as an executive in residence at the Center for Positive Organizations at the Ross School of Business, and having a wonderful time teaching students, being with students, being with faculty, helping with various development projects for the center. And the reason I'm there is because of Bob Quinn. And I made a promise to myself after I became part of a unpopular reorganization of Bart Davis, and I happened to trip over this stack of books, and on the back cover of this book that I didn't know the name of was "Don't Let Your Company Kill You." And I said, because I was so unhappy with the reorganization, I read the book, and Bob was a tremendous ally for me in finding a way to leave Bart Davis and start the first Aspirion, and been a guiding light for me as well as the center. So I said, I'm going to give back to the center, and that's one of the reasons why I'm there. As far as Aspirion, we knew back when we were working on Lipitor that there was a potential issue with muscle pain, muscle weakness. We didn't think it was going to be as big an issue. And so what we've done is we've discovered a compound and developed it so that people who have, when they take, say, their Lipitor at 10 milligrams, and they get muscle pain, muscle weakness, we have another alternative drug, which is about ready to start phase 3 towards the third quarter of this year in thousands of patients, which doesn't cause the muscle pain, muscle weakness, and we understand why. So those of you who have been on statins, and you go, oh, my quads are killing me, or you're out running, and you say you can't recover quickly, that's because these statins have an effect on muscle physiology and muscle function. Our compound will lower LDL like a statin, lower hsCRP, which is an inflammatory marker that statins also will lower, but we don't have this muscle pain, muscle weakness. So because 38 million people are on statins right now, or have been on statins, we have an alternative for people to get to their LDL cholesterol goal. Those people, there's about 3.5 to 4 million people who can't tolerate a statin at all. We could be the drug of choice for those individuals. Those who can take 10 milligrams of Lipitor get their 30 to 35% lowering, but don't get to 50% where they need to be, we can put our compound on top of a statin and get them to their goal. And that's what's caused all the hoopla around the stock and the reality that we now have what we call not an experimental drug, but a drug we think that can have a major impact on people's risk of cardiovascular disease. And hopefully we'll be able to show that in our phase 3, that it's safe, effective, and the FDA will also agree with that. I'd like to thank Rob for the chance to give you a brief review of where we are in the second Aspirion Therapeutics. Thanks, Rob.
And guys, not only has Roger done a great deal for the community, but doesn't he look good? I mean, see Roger, see him
my wife dressed me this morning.
every morning, Roger and I pass each other at the gym, and we say, man, you look good this morning.
That's before we have a cup of coffee.
Yeah. But no carbs.
No carbs.
No carbs. So let's see, I think that's it. Anybody else that I said I would ask to present? I don't want to miss anybody. I think we're all set. By the way, just a little bit about Leaders Connect. A lot of exciting things going on with my company. We've been in existence for about 20 years, and we do a couple things. I do executive coaching, and on a one-to-one basis, and also we do Leaders Connect roundtables. So they call it Leaders Connect Gold Cultivator Groups, because in these roundtables, and how many of you are part of those roundtables or have been? Raise your hands. A lot of people in the room. It's about setting goals and getting support from like-minded individuals to achieve those goals. So it's a pretty cool program, and I'm forming a new group probably in about May. So if anybody's interested, and I also have the OF version of that, which is for I won't say what the OF stands for, but you have to be 55 or older to be in that group. And if you are, I'm forming a new one of those groups too, but it's for people who have done their career, pretty much they're in transition, trying to figure out, they still want to be relevant, they still want to contribute, but maybe they don't have to work at the same job that they were working. They want to make some kind of transition. So it's an opportunity to sit with people and talk about that transition to, I don't call it retirement, I call it next stage. You know, what's your next job going to be, or volunteer activity. We're also launching Leaders Connect Consulting Company, which we'll talk about next time. And Dante Vasquez, who's now working with me, is going to be heading that enterprise. So that's trying to provide high-level consulting, the kind of consulting you might get from a major accounting firm or McKinsey, provided to smaller businesses. So the idea is to try to provide that level of consultation, bring in some of the tools that kids learn in MBA programs to the small businesses and not-for-profits in Michigan. So we've got all those going on, and the breakfast series, of course. So now we need some more. How many people still need chairs here? We could put them in front of the counter. I think we're pretty full today, so that's really good. And I'm glad we've been asking people to register online, and I appreciate that people let me know if they can't come, because if you sign up, you can see we're running out of space. We've been sold out. And next month we have Cynthia Wilbanks, who will be fantastic. She's been an executive VP at the university and has worked with, she works with Dr. Schlissel now, and she worked with Mary Sue Coleman, and she's been, I think, maybe a third president. So she's got some stories to tell about government relations and what it's like to be high-level administrator. I guess she's got her hands full this morning after the near riot at the Board of Regents meeting last night. Not Regents, but I guess it was the meeting? It was the Regents meeting. Okay, it was. So some students protested, which I thought was kind of cool, having been here in the 60s. Let's get back to any former SDS people out here. Yeah.
You started, and you did.
I started. I was afraid of getting arrested. I couldn't afford to be a rebel at that point. I had to pay my way through school and all that. So we're going to. Do you have another announcement? Just moving things along. All right. So we're going to bring Bob and Gretchen up now, and I introduced Bob as an old friend, and Gretchen and I have also known each other for a long time. And Gretchen is one of the premier researchers on something we all talk about a lot, which is empowerment. And she has done a lot on that, and that's her contribution. Both Bob and Gretchen are at the business school. They both are part of the Positive Organizational Scholarship Center. It's a new term now you use. What do you call it now?
Center for Positive Organizations.
Center for Positive Organizations. And they've done some great research. And one of the things that I want to give them a hand for, they just were shocked to find that they won an award for this book. They won the Ben Franklin Award for the best education book of the year. In the year.
All right. Well, Bob and I are delighted to be here with you today, and thank you to Rob and Dante for organizing this and inviting us, and for Zingerman's for hosting us, and the Bank of Ann Arbor for sponsoring this. So Bob and I are business school professors, and so our focus over the years has been studying transformational business leaders. And over the last maybe 12 to 15 years, we've made this switch to emphasizing particularly positive leadership. Leaders that attract people to want to make a positive difference in the world, to make a difference in others' lives. And we've been very fortunate to be part of a business school that has that now as part of its mission, positive business. And on that note, we've brought a handout for you that describes a conference that we're having in May that is bringing business leaders from around the world coming together to share their best practices around positive leadership and positive business. And not just from a management perspective, but from a marketing perspective or accounting perspective. We're really trying to understand how to create these kind of positive businesses. And it's great to have leaders like Roger involved, and Rich as well, involved in helping us make that happen. So if you're interested after this talk today in learning more, please come for our conference in May. Our journey took even a little bit different route about 3 years ago when we got a call from a couple people at an interesting organization in Columbus. I know, Columbus. Can you believe we're collaborating with people from Ohio? Now, I'm a Buckeye by birth. I've been transformed over the years. But we got this call from a couple people in Columbus at an organization called Patel for Kids. And they are a nonprofit aimed at helping develop teachers to become their best selves, to accelerate student learning. And they talked to us and they said, we're really interested in your work on positive leadership. And I think we've got some interesting teachers that we can both learn from. And so we went down and started some conversations with them, and we became really intrigued. And it felt a little bit out of our comfort zone to be looking at a different kind of positive leader outside of positive work organizations. That as we got to know these teachers, we were so inspired by them, in that they really are positive leaders who don't create one organization over many years, but who create a new organization every year. A new positive organization every year, where they have to start from scratch and then graduate their students to the next level and then start over the next year. And so let me give you just a little bit of background about these students as a way to set the stage for thinking about what we can learn from these teachers about how to become better leaders ourselves. And then I'll transition to Bob, who will kind of help us take a process to do that. Dante, I think I'm going to have you. My clicker's not. I know. Seems so high tech, right? Maybe it's the Mac PC thing. Who knows?
All right, I'll be here.
All right. So if any of you have read, if you want me to move, stand here. This here. Okay. If you've read any of the work that Bob's done or that have come out of our work at our center, we talk a lot about positive deviance. And people think that term sounds kind of like an oxymoron. Isn't deviant bad? In sociology, we talk about deviance as, drug users or prostitutes or, people that go against the norms of society. Well, we've been interested in studying positive deviants or positive outliers, people who do things in radically different ways to get radically different results. And in any system, there are people who are these positive outliers and positive deviants. And we find they're very inspiring because they help us think differently. Dante, can you go to the next slide? So we've been studying these teachers. These are the cream of the crop. These are teachers, if you go one more slide, Dante. Here's an example. These are teachers who year in and year out advance student learning. So here's the average. These are students who are advancing student learning year in and year out at rates much higher than expected. So a normal teacher you would expect to move advance student learning and growth by 1 year in one academic year. These are teachers who advance their students consistently much more than 1 year, 1.5 years, 2 years in the subjects that they're talking about. So it's not just working harder, it's not just doing more of the same thing. These are teachers who have to do things radically different to get these kind of scores. So we conducted in-depth interviews, we did some workshops with these extraordinary teachers, and we've been deeply inspired by what they've done to make such a dramatic difference in their lives. And Dante, if you can go one more slide, we want to show you just a short video clip that kind of introduces some of the themes that these teachers have brought out. So let's see if we can, with this number of people in the room, get the sound working well enough that you can hear.
In every classroom, there's possibility. In every student, there's possibility. Thriving is about seeing and embracing greatness, and there's greatness all around us.
This book introduces highly effective teachers in their own words and their own stories, and the book shares those stories in a way that brings excellence to life.
The key message of the book is a hopeful one. That, number one, there are great teachers out there, and that wherever you are in terms of your capacities as a teacher, you can get better.
It's the camaraderie that's developed and the sense of community that's developed as professionals through the stories that are told. You're not alone.
I never expected to learn as much as I've learned. It speaks to the meaning behind my work. For those teachers that are really ready to say, there has to be more, this is an avenue to get them there.
Having those moments, really drives you to continue to give 100% and become proactive in exploring what is something I haven't done to reach this student. Because there's always something you can do to make some kind of a difference.
We all have this potential within us if we're willing to start this journey. And the stories that these teachers are telling are so inspiring. They attract you to want to be great.
If we can learn from these teachers how to go in and take kids and transform those kids, then we've learned one of the most important lessons of life. We're going to touch the whole planet.
Interesting thing about these teachers. Most of them don't even know that they have these scores that are so off the charts. They only find out when their principal comes and talks to them about toning down their approach a little bit because they're making the other teachers look bad, right? Because all the parents are requesting them to be the teachers for their students. These are teachers who are very humble in their approach, and teachers who aren't maybe naturally great themselves. In the stories that they tell us, they talk a lot about the hardships that they had early as teachers while they were trying to find their path forward and trying to find their approach to reaching students, and how it's a continuous journey for them because every new class, every new student offers some new challenge that they have to continually learn from. Dante? So as we were interviewing these teachers and as academics, as scientists, we're always looking for, well, what can we take away? What are the lessons from these teachers? And we were able to identify a set of contrasts that we saw in these teachers. Of course, we all have a lot of background in normal teaching, right? We've all been through 12 years of K-12 teaching, many of us through college teaching or advanced degrees. We know a lot. We're already experts in conventional teaching. But we identified some important differences about what these teachers do that's radically different. And we found it's very similar to the kind of traits, the kind of behaviors, the kind of approaches that we see with our positive leaders. So I'm going to give the microphone to Bob, and he's going to help us kind of take things to the next level in terms of applying it to ourselves?
We're going to have you do a little exercise. Oh, right there. Okay. It's like being home. We're going to have you do a little exercise. Let me frame this by telling you a quick story. I had a sabbatical coming up, and I have a friend who's the president at BYU Hawaii. And he said, well, why don't you spend your sabbatical with us? And I thought, winter in Ann Arbor, winter in Hawaii. That was a no-brainer. And I arrived, and almost immediately he said, I wonder if you'd help us with something. I said, sure. He says, we have a breakfast scheduled next week with about 15, 20 faculty members. Would you run the breakfast discussion? And I said, sure. What's the topic? And he said, well, I have everybody now read Ken Bain's book. It's called What Great College Professors Do. And I said, oh, okay. I said, do you have a copy? He said, I sure do. So that afternoon I went home and I started reading this book. This guy, Ken Bain, spent 15 years visiting campuses, identifying the top professor on each campus in terms of teaching, attending classes, interviewing them, interviewing colleagues, and then putting all this data together in this book. The day I read it was the day that our manuscript was due to the publisher. I was supposed to send it that afternoon. What was absolutely stunning was that what he said about college professors and what we were saying about the best public school teachers in the state of Ohio was stunningly similar. It just took my breath away. So we're going to give you a little exercise. What I've done is simply put two tables on a sheet of paper. One was my summary of his first couple of chapters. The other is kind of a summary of what's in the book about public school teachers. And what we'd like to do is give you just a couple of minutes to work with this. And here's the instructions. We're going to have you share your individual insights with a partner. Preferably someone you didn't come with, someone you haven't met before, if that's possible, given where you're sitting. We'd like you to come to a consensus about what differentiates a great teacher from a good teacher. So take a look at this, and then talk to each other about what you think it's saying. What do you agree different now? If you want to think about your own experience, that is, everybody in this room probably had one great teacher that really changed your life. Think about that person. See if it matches up with this. Number two, come to a consensus about what differentiates a great leader from a good leader. Now we got a lot of leaders. We got some good ones. We got a few great ones. Just as we asked the question, what differentiates a great teacher from a good teacher? What differentiates a good leader and a great leader? And then finally, make a list of what you like, what you are like normally, and what you'd like, what you're like at your very best. Okay? So take a look, grab a partner, and talk your way through. We're going to need about 3 minutes for each of those tasks, so a 9-minute exercise. And then we want to talk about that with you. Okay? That's a good teacher.
Yeah, we knew we were a finalist. You just never know. The organization that's helped prepare us.
A lot of energy in the room around that topic. What I'd like to do is debrief that a little bit. Gretchen and I will alternate our way through these questions. The first question is, what do you see as the difference between a good teacher and a great teacher? Yes, sir. Okay, thank you. Yes.
Good teacher, process management. Great teacher, educational leadership, that empathetic to the individual student.
Okay, so the first thing I'm hearing is a kind of leadership as opposed to process management that's empathetic.
Right.
You want to say something about the word empathy and what you mean by it in this case?
You have not only the ability to recognize the situation of the other person, but you're open to it, you're sensitive to it, and you feel you need to generate an appropriate response to it. People are, rather than trying to, rather than taking the floggings will continue until morale improves.
Another approach.
My personal favorite. You are really responding individually to the range or spectrum of the student's needs, both skills and also holes in their education or in the ability to do the work, and creating a bridge for each of them. So it's a collective experience. It's a collective experience built on optimizing the individuals.
Thank you. When you saw that brief little video, and those were pictures of actual teachers that we worked with, you'll notice how normal they look. They're big, they're small, they come from this kind of background, that kind of background. I've done a lot of studies in my life. I've never had an experience where I was so inspired to be in the presence of these people. And your answer brings back a very specific moment. In fact, she was up there. We're interviewing this particular teacher. She said, I went to the ed school. They taught me how to teach. Then I went to my first day of class. 30 faces staring at me. She said, I knew that if I was going to be good, I had to learn the needs and interests of every one of those kids. And it was a decision. And I made it. And I did it. And I'm impressed. And I'm writing this down. And then she said, then I went to the next level. My head snapped up. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, then I discovered that every kid's unique. Excuse me. She said, well, every kid is the same. I said, the same? You just said they're all unique. She said, now catch this part. No matter what they say or do, no matter what they say or do, every kid wants to succeed, wants to learn, wants to be respected, wants to be loved. When you break that code, you can teach anybody, special ed, gifted, old, young. She was talking about exactly what you just said, in a way that was profound and powerful. So thank you. What else? Yeah.
So we had a set, let me speak up, a set here. A couple started with beliefs. The first was, and building on what you said, a belief in the ability of every individual to learn, first of all. There's a core belief that seems to sit under those. There's also belief that they're learning together. They're learning from the teacher, but the teacher's learning from them as they work through the dynamic. That drives a connectivity, which seems to be essential.
Let's slow down, because I want to catch this. Every one of these so far has been spectacular. Okay. So the first one is a belief. I believe they can learn. A lot of teachers don't believe the kids can learn. Or they say, these kids don't want to learn. You see, they come from that neighborhood over there. And they don't want to learn. End story. Therefore, I'm excused all accountability. And you're saying, there's a clear message here. They believe all these kids can learn. And then second one is?
The next one was that they're learning together. The teacher is learning with them.
That's crazy. That's a crazy thought. What he's saying is knowledge is co-created. You see, the conventional model says, I'm the expert. I'm the boss. I'm going to give you my expertise. You better listen. And he's saying, there's an invisible process where people become equals in a relationship that's meaningful, and the knowledge is co-created. That is so far from what we normally believe, it's almost impossible to process. I think it's enormously important. Thank you. Keep going ahead.
Yeah, so the next one is that creates a connection between the teacher, the student, and the class that then drives...
Stop, freeze. Okay, so we just said, okay, there's a relationship here. We're co-creating in this relationship. Again, conventional things. Says, yeah, we're teaching individuals. And he says, no, there's a connection with the class. These teachers build positive organizations. They understand the whole, the culture necessary to accelerate learning. That's very hard to see in my conventional mindset that I developed since I was 3 years old. That's so different than that. That's a radical thought. Okay.
And the last piece is it's a dynamic and iterative process as a result of that, as they're creating together, so as opposed to a fixed agenda.
I just threw my process analytics out the window. It's an ongoing process that never stops changing. It's real, it's live, it's living, and it means I have to be aware of it and adapt to it. Those are profound observations. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Can I just add one piece about the co-creating part that I think is so powerful from these teachers is that so many teachers feel like they can't sustain their teaching over time, right? It's very easy to get burned out. That relentless in the classroom every day. And what we hear about the co-creation part is it actually makes teaching a lot more fun, right? Because I don't have to be up there to be the expert, to have it all figured out myself. Instead, I'm learning along with the students, and they're offering ideas that are so profound about how to teach this material in new ways to the kids sitting next to them that might not be very connected right now. They're the ones that have the good ideas that allow me to take my teaching to the next level. So it's a way that sustains teaching energy, which I think is so powerful for all teachers who feel like by the end of the year, I don't have anything more to give. These are teachers who are creating energy in the doing of their work. So I think that's another powerful piece of that.
And just building on that for a second, I just last year interviewed a CEO of a global company who had enormous success, but the first year was a disaster. Looking back across his 11 years, said, the single biggest problem I had as a CEO was I believed I had to be the expert. I had to be the smartest one. I had to know the answers. Until that changed, nothing happened. That's what Gretchen's saying. Ed's saying. Thank you. There's one here.
Well, I guess I'll kind of follow up on that. I think the difference is it's a me versus you. I'm the point. You came here to see the teacher versus you are the point. The class is the point. I think one of the hardest things to learn as a teacher is when to shut up. Just stop speaking and let it happen.
Again, so powerful. I must be talking if I'm the expert. But what if learning is not about listening to me talk? I believe the fact that you just talked to each other, that everybody in this room was talking for 10 minutes, is far more important than if we gave a speech. What is learning? Thank you.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. Gretchen, question answer.
Maybe they were talking to me. All right, well, I to transition to the next set of topics. Sorry. Next set of topics that you were talking about is the difference between a good leader and a great leader. And by way of segue with that, as I was preparing the slides for introduction this morning, I added another slide that somehow got lost, and I just want to go back to it just for a moment. It was a slide that was taking the idea that Rob introduced in his blog, introducing our session today. Do you remember what that blog was about? Did any of you read it? Rob asked his readers to think about the best teacher that they ever had. And what was it about that teacher that made such a profound difference to them? And I wanted to ask you to think about that yourselves, and I'm having a sense that you were doing that implicitly as you were answering these questions. But as I make this transition to great leadership, I want to just pause and reflect on a positive leader that I had in my own life. And that was somebody who, when I joined the Ross School of Business now, 25 years ago, as a brand new PhD student, one of the first things that the older students told us, myself and the other person who is the brand new PhD student in our department, is they said, "What you don't realize is the department made a mistake this year." I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "What was the mistake?" They said, "The PhD advisor made all the decisions himself about who was going to be accepted into the program. And as a result, none of the department bought into your acceptance in the program." And I thought to myself, wow, what a great confidence builder. I need to get started into the program. And, so you come in with that mindset already of, gosh, do I have what it takes to get a PhD at a great business school? I had come out of an undergraduate program where I'd been, very successful, but, making the jump right to a PhD program is a lot. And so in my first year, I had an advisor who wasn't really quite sure, how to use me to help her in her work. And at one point I said, "Do you have even any filing I can do? I just want to feel productive somehow." And at the end of my first year, I was feeling a little bit lost about, gosh, am I doing, am I in the right program? Am I doing the right thing? And I was at a department event, and we were playing volleyball. And at a break, I had a conversation with one of the faculty members, and he said to me, "How is your first year going?" And I said, "Well, it's going okay." And he said, "No, really, how is it going?" And I said, "Well, I'm not really sure where it's going, and I haven't quite found my research niche." And he said, "Why don't you come and see me on Monday, and we'll talk about it." Well, that teacher did a lot of the things that you were just talking about. He really had empathy, he listened to what my needs were, he saw strengths that I had that maybe I was overlooking. He helped me see my potential in a way that I hadn't before. And he has really inspired me to try to do that with my students as well. I had one student who said to me a year ago, she said, "I'm a professor now," and she said, "It was because you said something to me as an undergraduate that said, 'Have you ever thought about getting a PhD? I think you'd be really good.'" She said, "I never thought of myself that way, but that one simple sentence of, 'I think you could actually be really good,' opened up a whole new set of opportunities." Now, I'm just going to say the person that I was just describing was this person right here, but and Rob said, as Bob was sharing some of the stories about great teachers, is that it's ironic that a great teacher is studying great teachers. So, Bob, I just want to thank you because you were a great teacher in my own life. But let's make this shift to the difference between a good leader and a great leader. What are some of the contrasts there for you in terms of what's differentiating good leadership with what's great leadership? Yes?
Well, empowerment's definitely one. I mean, if I go into leaders and I think of past bosses I had when I was very young that believed in me, didn't matter. I was 23 years old at the time. He put me in charge of stuff. So it was just, and they made me, like, you could have applied, but they had a 3-day program that was new employee orientation, customer excellence program. So everybody in the company had to go through it, as well as everybody in the company had to go through it. But I was selected, and I would have never had the guts at 20. I think I was like 23 to apply to be a corporate trainer at this company that we paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to have the program even designed, and they chose me to be one of the facilitators, if you will. And so it was that empowerment and that belief in me, no matter what my age was or whatever, that I had a boss. He was the CFO of the company at the time that I worked for that made it happen. So he's forever my best boss ever.
And how do you define empowerment when you use that word? What would be the definition?
Well, like I said, he would put me in charge. It was a healthcare company, and we were Blue Cross Blue Shield was going after us pretty heavy, and we had all the audits and this, that, and everything. Everybody has healthcare background, but we were always worried about Blue Cross's reimbursements because it was an elective. It was a bariatric treatment center, it was Forest Health. Everybody's familiar with that. And we went through this audit. I had to go to lawyers. I had to go downtown Detroit. He put me in charge of the whole thing because I was thorough, and we'd come in on Saturday. We had to take all of our medical records, make copies. We had to kind of expose everything. They were looking under the sheets, and he just put me in charge of the project. That was what I mean by empowerment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that
confidence building.
Confidence building, showing faith in somebody, giving them responsibility and accountability. As Rob said, empowerment is one topic that's near and dear to my heart. And I think it's one of those ideas that many of us think is a good idea, but the implementation of it is really hard. Research shows that we have a bias to think our own ideas or our own way of doing things is best, right? We kind of know from our own experience this works, right? And so to give somebody like Heather responsibility and empower them to lead this new effort is hard if Heather decides to do it in a way that's different than the way I would do it. And so the normal tendency is to want to step in and say, well, wait, Heather, I empowered you, but you're, doing it differently than I thought. And it would be better if you move on this track. One of the hard things about being an empowering leader is to truly empower somebody. And it's not abdicating, right? It's not just saying, okay, Heather, you're on your own, get it done. It's providing the right kind of support, but freedom and autonomy for Heather to find her way through the process, knowing there could be some missteps along the way, but how do we learn from those?
I got to even go in Detroit with the attorneys to Blue Cross for the meeting. I had to borrow a suit. I didn't own a business.
She said she didn't even have a suit when she was going to do her, but to show that kind of faith. And so, yeah, and it's hard. And what we saw in these teachers is that they were truly empowering people to get out of their comfort zone. There was a teacher who told the story of, she had a student who was really failing, really disconnected from the school, from her classmates, wasn't fitting in, and how the teacher made a real effort to find some point of connection where that student had some expertise and found a way for her to be in charge of something in the classroom that would allow her to show that strength, to show her capability, to show her competence, and how that student really blossomed just with that little bit of showing of competence. There was a hand up over here. Yeah.
I think one of the things that struck me immediately between whether it's teachers and professors and managers / leaders, there's a certain level of confidence that has to be in place to be open to the possibilities and open to the idea of having this dialogue, that it's a dialogue as opposed to a monologue, and that if you don't have that confidence, it's very difficult to do, and that so few people can retain that in any of these environments because of what's going on above and around them.
Yeah. So having that confidence to do things like to be quiet for a moment, right? That takes some confidence, not to be filling all the space and showing your expertise and
yeah. And the other part of that being that the conventional attributes are things that can be taught to someone and implemented with minimal thought, and that to move into that category of excellence, some of that is innate characteristics, or it's critical thinking skills that may not have been brought forward for that individual.
Yeah. So you use the word innate. I think there certainly are some things that some people have natural tendencies to be great teachers or great leaders. But our work shows again and again that so many of those key skills are learned, like the critical thinking skill, or that skill to be quiet, and to give people a moment to reflect and pause. I know for me that was one of my big insights as a teacher, not to fill every space, or my insights in working with my graduate students, not to fill every space, because in that moment of silence, that's where real thinking's happening.
Objectivity versus subjectivity, that so many of the attributes of the conventional were objective and the excellence was subjective. So I guess there were lots of things that popped up when we tried to compare the various types of leaders.
Yeah, what's the difference between objective and subjective as you're using those words?
Well, the subjective being that there's no right answer and that there's lots and lots of perspectives and ways of looking at something, and the objective just being task-oriented, fact-oriented, that there's not a lot of, I use the term critical thinking, but there's not a lot of that involved, or problem-solving skills, those kinds of things, that it's more of a checklist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the other pieces around empowerment that I think is so potent and might be more subjective is that it might be actually faster if I were to do that training myself, right? I've got the expertise, I know how to do it, I'm confident it would work in the classroom, but there's something really powerful about her development. Might take a little bit longer, but there might be better ideas that come out of it. But even more importantly, it's helping her develop. And we can't always measure that, right, in the short term.
Gretchen.
What else? Yeah.
Yeah. Just ask a question. I wanted to ask Bob, and you could be involved in something different. I heard Chick Corea and Herbie Hancock last night, so I'm all in improvisation.
And you're here this morning?
I'm here this morning. So, Bob, you heard her story. The question I have for you, and maybe you guys can dialogue, but what was it that made you ask that question about Gretchen? What was it as you as a teacher? And then she talked about the impact of it, but I wonder if you guys can talk about that special moment.
Yeah, I remember, there's a lot of things, I don't remember from last week, but I remember that moment. And, I looked at her, and what did I see? Enormous potential. And I knew that in most doctoral programs, everywhere, it gets wasted by processes and assumptions and beliefs. And that's about all organizations. And I can't stand that. And I looked for ways to tap that. It was an absolutely natural thing for me to do, to ask that question that day. And we became immediately bonded. And I can still remember, she was in my office almost every day over the next 2 or 3 years. And it wasn't me teaching her. It was us learning together. And that's a very precious memory.
If I could ask one other question. I know you've done this, but how have you played that forward?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's where you have to find your own path forward, right? So at first you're like, wow, I want to be like Bob, right? Well, I'm going to be a really mediocre Bob, right? I can't tell stories like Bob can. I don't necessarily, you had that great comeback in the moment, earlier, got the laugh. I'm not going to do that. I can't be a great Bob. I can be a good Gretchen, but I have to find my own path to do that. So part of that in the classroom was finding my own pathway to how I could be great, and that was part of that empowerment process, to say, try some things, have the confidence to know that they might not work the first time, but if you have enough trust and enough connection with your class, they'll help you get better and help you find your way. But I also, with my students, try to, at the beginning, just really listen to where they're at right now and not just get right on to the task. Even though that's my tendency, I'm very task-oriented. I think part of the reason Bob and I work well together is we're really different, right? Bob's a really big thinker, very visionary. I'm a very task-oriented, let's get it done kind of thing. We work really well together in that way. But, yeah. One other funny thing I'll also say about this story Bob just told about me coming into his office a lot. when we first started working together, because the confidence level was low, I would take 3 weeks trying to polish the analysis I was doing and have a good set of talking points for our meetings so I was prepared on everything. And I'd come to his office after 3 weeks and he'd say, "Where have you been?" And we'd spend 10 minutes and I'd tell him what I did and he was like, "Well, if we would have talked 2 weeks ago, I could have given you a little bit of feedback and you could have gone here." And it's like, wow, you're really right. But it was that building that trust to say I didn't have it all figured out before I went into his office. All right, what other differences?
We better go to the last one.
Oh, last one. Can we he had his hand up. Can we, yes?
I think language is critical to framing the way people grow, the way they manage to do things on their own. There are two things that I wish I had learned myself about 25 years earlier. One is, it occasionally happens, someone comes in and says, "Well, I'd really like to work for you." And I say, "Well, you can't. You work with me. You can't work for me." The other is, the one thing I hire people after 3 minutes. You can tell after 3 minutes. I say the same thing. There is one behavior that gets you fired. There was a staff person engaged this behavior, and she was out immediately. What did she do? She did exactly what I asked her every time. Mm-hmm. I can make myself look like a fool if I can do this out. I hire you to think. And to say, "Are you sure that's what you want?" And again, language is a whole other discussion. Yeah.
Gretchen, that's, by the way, it's Michael Brooks, who's one of the great teachers, ran Hillel for years. And how many students? He's impacted thousands over the years, and great resource.
Yeah, great.
The impact goes both ways.
Yeah, well, I think that issue of language and symbols and what's symbolic that the leader is sending out. I've been so interested in watching Pope Francis and so many of the signals that he's sending. Whose feet he washed on Holy Thursday weren't, the top, high status people in the Vatican. He's washing, the feet of homeless people or Muslims or prisoners or people that you would see the biggest distance between him. And those symbols are so important about, well, what does this leader stand for and what are they about? So great point. All right, Bob, last question.
Last question's really hard. Someone give me an answer. Yes, ma'am.
I normally will give feedback, but then I started realizing if I put this, whatever sentence is that I'm trying to feed back to the learner in a positive way, it brings them in, makes them feel good, and makes them feel empowered to do whatever it is we need to do together.
So you have great moments.
Yes.
And oftentimes in those great moments, you're bringing that person in with you and forming a working relationship. Now, we don't have time to debrief this question in full, which I'd like to do, but I think the question's crucial. Because what it says is everybody in this room has moments of greatness. And I believe that you and I, in our moments of greatness, are different than we are normally. But if we pay attention to those moments of greatness, number one, it's us. What does that do? That ignites possibility, hope, right? Two, what do I learn from me? If that's what happens when I'm at my best and things are going, how do I expand that? The greatness is in us, every one of us. Can I go home to work this morning and be better than I was all week? Because I focused on them. How can I shock them positively? How can I be a positive beacon? That, I think, is an incredibly important question. I want to wrap this up by reading you something that happened this week. Slightly different from teachers, but close. Every morning I try to write a journal entry about the most important thing that happened the day before that I'm grateful for. This happened this week, and I just want to invite you to listen deeply to this account. My mother always told me to be careful about who I hang around with. For 45 years, I've been hanging around with a good friend and colleague who continually gets me into trouble. He recently volunteered himself and me to do some pro bono work in a large, bankrupt, inner-city school district. As might be imagined, the problems of the district are staggering. Our first meeting was with 90 principals. These were people who've been around the block a few times, and they do not suffer fools gladly. A leader from the central office made some introductory remarks, and I thought he was both authentic and conceptually sound. I was impressed. The applause, however, was tepid at best. My colleague leaned over and said, "These people have been through a lot, and they do not believe." I thought his observation was a vast understatement and a call. At the Center for Positive Organizations, our purpose is to help build positive organizations in which people flourish and exceed expectations. To do that, you have to do something that's difficult to do in every organization. You have to create belief and hope. I was about to step in front of the group, and I was not sure about my own state of belief and hope. I briefly framed the day and turned it over to my colleague to share some ideas from the science of positive organizing. I watched him present many times, and executives are always surprised and interested by the science of positive organizing. This day he was magnificent, and the very tough principles were drinking in his ideas. He eventually gave them an exercise and asked for some comments. As the comments began, my eyes filled with tears. They were truth tears, the kind of tears that come when I have a potent spiritual experience. Their answers were the answers of highly intelligent people who have pursued a noble purpose through many years of intense opposition. They were the answers of people who really knew who they were. I was home. I was with people I wanted to be with. I decided to give them everything I had. When it was my turn to stand up, I told them that I had come naked. I had no PowerPoint slides, and I had not prepared remarks beforehand. My goal was to be in the present moment, to explore what they taught me in the hour or so that I had watched and listened, and to hold an authentic conversation about what everyone most wanted. I did, and we did. At the end of the extraordinary experience, a woman raised her hand. And for about 5 minutes, she shared an emotional tirade about principles as sacrificial lambs. She said she was going to tell it like it really is. She described the true state of the city, the school district, and the kids. She described what it was really like to be a principal in an impossible context. Many of her genuinely pained statements were met with knowing reinforcement from the rest of the audience. When she was done, I simply asked, "Why?" It's not what she was expecting. She said, "Why what? Why do you do it?" "Because this is what I signed up for." "No." "No what?" "No, that's not the answer." This statement was shocking, and the room went deadly quiet. It was a potentially explosive moment. After a time, a man on the other side of the room said, "The kids. You do it because of the kids." All the heads nodded. We wrapped up. Afterwards, the feedback was reaffirming. One of the administrators who brought us in told my colleague, "I did not realize that what you were going to do would be this important." Think about that statement. It's full of implications for the larger world. Administrators in all organizations, like administrators in this case, tend to live in endless challenges of reality. They live in the logic of problem solving. It is very difficult to shift from a mentality of problem solving to a mentality of purpose finding. It's difficult to turn minds from the reality of constraint to the reality of possibility. Many executives have no idea how to do it. Using their analytic minds, they design needed changes, but they have no idea how to create belief and hope. When they see it, however, they recognize the value. As I walked out, I happened to be next to the woman who spoke for 5 minutes. She was still emotional, but very open. She returned to the notion of being a sacrificial lamb. I said something about positive leadership. At that moment, she had an epiphany. Her face lit up, and she said, "That's it. Maybe I'm supposed to be a sacrificial lamb. Maybe that's my job in this huge transformation that has to take place in this city." This woman of purpose had just further clarified her purpose, and it immediately gave her increased meaning. I watched the transformation. The pained emotions disappeared. She looked different. She was standing in her purpose, and she was renewed. We just looked at each other with a sense of awe. We hugged and went our separate ways. I never got her name. The next morning, I was writing my gratitude journal, and I noted my appreciation of being in the presence of autotelic people. Telic means purpose. Auto means within. When you spend your entire life at war, you either become a robot or you find out who you really are, and you internalize a higher purpose. Doing so allows you to offer persistent service in the face of opposition, and you become a genuine force for good in the world. Being autotelic is a blessing few people on this planet have. It's an extraordinary resource. When autotelic people die, their funerals are worth attending. I'm grateful for the principles and for what they taught me about how to build positive organizations that bring out the best in people. Wherever we go, school teachers, principals, administrators, and we look at the positive deviants, we find secrets that are outside the conventional mindset. I can't think of a better work to do than to try to understand that. Thank you very much.
That's fabulous. Gretchen, Bob, we can't be more grateful to you. This is very inspiring, and you're speaking to many, many teachers out here, so I'm sure all of you can feel proud today about what you do as you teach. So Bob and Gretchen, please come on over here. You guys got to sign some books next to Hillary. If you could form a line going back toward Rich and around that way, that would be the best way to do it. And if people cannot stay and want the books, just give us a card, and we can arrange to get you guys to get the books signed for you. Thank you very much, and see you all next month with Cindy Wilbanks.
Good to see you.